to the subject. Let me just read the title again, I've forgotten it. When can waking up become someone's abuse of power? So this is such a big subject, and this is a subject that is very interesting, and I don't really have any firm points of view on it. I'm just more open to changing my mind about this subject. So if you go to the extreme of the guru-student relationship, the extreme way, and this even happens in Christianity and all religions, is that there is this extreme part that's that one person, the leader, is speaking out God's will, is speaking God, and everybody has to listen to what that person says, and what that person said is God's will, and so nobody can argue with it, even if it's crazy wisdom. And then you've got the other extreme of maybe like the being the teachings where it's got nothing to do with the person. So the person, what the person does or doesn't do, their actions have got nothing to do with it. So that can't be taken into a more political stance. Like, it can't be about the way humans organize themselves or the way humans hold themselves, because it's got nothing, waking up's got nothing to do with the human. So listening to someone because they're speaking out of more God's will doesn't make sense. And I do agree more with that way, because I don't think that waking up's got anything to do on the human level. However, I do think that the human can become crazy, can grow into crazy suffering because of its seeking energy. And I do think that settling down that seeking energy can be helpful, to be able to hear that more extreme non-duality, but it's not the person hearing it. But if the person is so loud, there's no openness to anything else. So I ultimately think that your freedom belongs to no one. It isn't political and isn't about human behavior or reconditioning yourself or what you do or don't do. And it's total and utter unconditioned love. And no guru, no behavior, no way of being can give you that. It's everybody's essence. And that can only be unconditioned love. Everything else is conditioned. So I do agree with that. But I do think that sometimes on the human level, it can be helpful for somebody else to point out your dynamics and guide you through your dynamics, like to be reflected back. So if you're behaving like a twat, which all of us do, and if you're acting from ego seeking energy, someone pointing it out can be super helpful. So like these online talks talking about what seeking energy is and what it does and what it creates and the relationships can be helpful. And sometimes when you're living with your partner who's into the same subject, it can be helpful for you guys to reflect each other back, your behavior, or your friends. Like, so if somebody's like really obsessed with something, just pointing that out, that they're getting obsessed with something. But when does that turn into like creating an organization and people living in an organization together and having a guru which has all the power? Like, when does it turn into that? It can happen in relationships. So relationships can be unbalanced, because one person in that relationship might have more of the teacher role. So say if you're in a romantic relationship and there's one person that's been listening to these talks or been into this subject a lot longer and knows it a lot better than the other person, and then that person points out dynamics to that person. So say if you've been into this subject for years and then your partner gets into it, you can point things out to them. But when does it become abusive? I would say the line in which it's got to be questioned. So the part where you have to question what your partner's doing, if your partner's pointing out your dynamics, if it helps them get what they want. This is where you have to begin to question it. Not necessarily their way, but what they want. So say if So say with my partner, if they hadn't been helping around the house. So I'm just making this up. This is theoretical. If my partner is listening, I'm not saying that this is like some subtle message about taking out the bins. My partner's job is to take out the bins and to clean the bins and do all those sorts of things. So say, and he does it very well, so, being diplomatic. So say so say he started not doing the bins, and I had to keep asking him to do the bins, and then finally he got very angry because I kept asking to do the bins, and then there was a lot of blame put onto me. There might be a coming out, like you're too dominant or you're too bossy. There could be like an openness to exploring on both sides. If we've prior agreed to do the bins, he's to do the bins and then not keep doing it, then I presume it's more than likely lays with him. But there could be an openness at me looking, is it because I'm being too bossy or too dominant? So there's an openness there. And then on his side, there could be an openness to looking at why he gets so reactive or angry if that happens. So this is quite neutral in a way, because this is like couples, but this is like a more conscious couple. So both of us remain open to looking at dynamics, but neither of us are getting a big payoff from those dynamics. I mean, who really cares that much about the bins? If one of us was doing like all the household jobs because it was good for our karma or good for seeking to see through our seeking dynamics, then it could be questioned because the other partner has got away with participating and getting a lot of pleasure and bonus from it. But if you've got like a fairly balanced relationship with jobs around the house and there's that conversation, that to me seems like a couple just reflecting, and both have got to be open. So I've got to be just as open that I might be being too dominant as to the other one, why they get so reactive about doing the bins. So there's got to be an openness on both sides, because to be closed and shut and definite that it's the other person's problem, I would say is a shrinking thought. It's a closing thought. It's a non-growth thought. To be open to that it might be you're being too dominant and too bossy and too strict, that's a more growth. And me, I can grow. And if they're open to that, they're like I'm reminding them of their mum or whatever it is, like, or something like that, that they are open to growing as well. They're open to that as well. And that to me seems quite balanced. So where is it begins to go out of balance? I would say if it's that one is always wanting to be right, so one is always wanting to be right and repetitively is always wanting to be always right, and two, one of the people get huge payoff from the other person believing it's their seeking dynamics. So they get a big payoff, they get a big thing. So they convince the other person to clean all the house, do all the gardening, because they've got to, that's confronting their seeking dynamics because they were lazy or something like that. And that's something gurus do. Like gurus do that. They say you've got to do this or you've got to do that because it's your seeking energy. And I'm not even sure that I'm opposed to that, because that could lead to nice exploration. But I'm opposed to it, I think, if the guru gets a big payoff. So if it's like the gurus constantly having their house cleaned, getting lots of money, getting lots of possessions from the other person, like getting a big payoff, then I begin to think it's unbalanced. Say if you're wanting to have one person is wanting to have an open relationship and the other one isn't, is the one that's wanting the open relationship going to get a big payoff? Like, is there a thing in their mind they want? If it is, then convincing this one that not having an open relationship is their seeking dynamics, that begins to border on the one of the partners is getting a big payoff of it. It's being used as a trading tactic rather than a true exploration of someone's dynamics. This is where I think you have to begin to be careful. It's okay to point out to each other things, to point out to your partner and to point out to your friends things, but do you get a big payoff if you point it out? Do you get to continuously be right? It's all right to be right some of the time. I've got to say sometimes I am right. But do you get to be right all the time? Do you never have to apologize? Like, do you get to be right all the time? Do you never have to apologize because you're so enlightened it's always the other one's dynamics? Is it always the other one? And there might be in a relationship that there is one that is more wise, but even so, the one that's more wise will still fuck up and still have to apologize sometimes and still have to look at their dynamics too. And if they're not doing that as well, bing, 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 if they're not looking at their dynamics, I would set alarms going off. If they're claiming that they don't have any dynamics left, it tired me out doing that. I'm sure that hurt a lot of people's ears, but it was fun. It was like a, what's that breathing called? Forgotten what that breathing thing's called. Pranya breathing. No, I've forgotten what it's called. If you are following anyone, if you're in a relationship with anyone that doesn't have dynamics left, run. I might be wrong, but that would be my suggestion. If they cannot apologize, if you see that again and again and again, why? Why are they taking up that role? Why are they telling people they don't have dynamics? Why are they implying that what they say is always right? That is not balanced. That is not balanced, in my opinion. It's not an easy dance. Like with some people that I become friends with or I'm in contact with a lot and they're maybe new to this subject, I can see a lot of dynamics in them, but it's best to only speak to them about it when they ask, or if they're really, really suffering and they're needing some help. It's too easy to get into a position of knowing better than them or having this unbalanced relationship. But it's not easy. You have to go with what you feel and be delicate. Well, you don't necessarily need to be delicate when you're pointing stuff out, but be delicate as in reflect a lot about it. And I'm in no way claiming to be perfect. When I'm in an argument, particularly about bins, me and my partner haven't had an argument about bins. He's very good at doing it. But so if we're in an argument about bins, I can have a human tendency to want to be right. But I'm aware of it. If I'm sitting in the position where I'm saying I am right and I have no awareness of it, and I'm continuously pushing to always be right, and I have no ability to reflect on that I'm so enlightened that couldn't possibly happen, it's always everybody else. This is dangerous shit. Humans are humans and they're animals, and our natural tendency as a human is to fulfill pleasure. So, it's easier to be right than it is to be wrong. Easier for us. And you have to have this ability to see the bigger picture of how important it is for all of us to be called out on our shit and be told that we're wrong. Like with my talks, when I do live talks, which I don't do that often, but when I do live talks, there's always this gentle balance of I want people to feed back their disagreement, what they don't like, question things in talk. So I want that. I want people to have that freedom. But it's always difficult because sometimes people do it with such abusive energy. They come up and they ask me a question and they're so mean sometimes with it, their energy, and dominating, and there's a nastiness to it. So when they question something, they come up with when they question me or the way I speak, they come up with a nasty energy. It's it's built, and then it's a blaming, accusatory, and trying to put me down. I remember one time in a talk, a guy came up and he started saying, why should I sit at the front, and why is this and that, and that we should have anarchy. I can't remember, but it was I understood his point as in we shouldn't just accept a dictator leader. We shouldn't just accept a guru. We shouldn't just accept a dictatorship, which can be what a guru is, they have the final say on everything. So I do have this anarchistic side to me of wanting to destroy these things, but it's also difficult if you've promised people a 2-hour talk and then you've got somebody that's coming with really negative energy trying to put you down. That's not right either. So I find it sometimes difficult in talks to allow people to criticize me, but to do it with not a really nasty energy, do it from a more loving place, because it's tiring also to have people being negative at you. It's tiring, you're doing a talk to a lot of people and then to have people really negative and interrupting you, that's also tiring too. But I agree with criticism. I agree that people should have opinions and give different opinions to what one person says, because that's what makes everybody's opinion better. That's what makes us grow by these disagreements. Disagreements are important. But sometimes in talks, I do find it difficult, where is that line where people can criticize, but then they're not trying to flatten you with negative energy or offload their negative energy onto you. I was trying to think of a smart way I could do it, where at the end people could debate stuff, but I don't have to necessarily partake in that part. So people have the freedom to say what everything's wrong or right with what I said, or say different things, or grow or expand on what I've said. But I don't necessarily have to be receiving some difficult energies from people, because I do think anybody that's not up for criticism has a tendency, I think, towards abuse and towards dictatorship. And it's not nice receiving criticism always. I'm okay. I'm okay. I can do it, and I can sit there and I can be harshly criticized in talks. But I do find energetically it's difficult when someone really offloads their like violent energy onto you. But that's a different thing, I think. They're taking out their energies rather than like criticizing from an open-hearted place. But sometimes humans find it difficult to distinguish between these. And if you're having someone criticize you in your talk and you're encouraging people to think and speak for themselves, and it's hard to point out to someone, but you're coming from such a dark place and you're trying to put it onto me, they think that you're trying to get out of them criticizing you. This is partly why I leave the YouTube comments on. I also leave the YouTube comments on because YouTube wants you to. But I used to block them because like that violent dark energy sometimes just used to just not want to be in contact with it. But actually I stopped letting people comment for a while, and then that darkness, like this dark part that can come up in humans, kind of stopped. So people criticize me, but it doesn't come from that really dark energy. They're saying really, really terrible things. So I think that when this whole teaching of reconditioning yourself and not acting out of seeking, and like accepting what's happening becomes abusive when these two dynamics happen. One, the speaker or whoever's teaching you does not take criticism and always has to be right. Always has to be right. And number two, the teacher or your partner or whoever it is who's guiding you, your friend, is getting a huge payoff from it. So by you not acting out your normal seeking patterns and your normal no, they're getting a huge payoff, whether it be financially or physically or sexually or romantically. Like I got talked in by many gurus to doing things which crossed my boundaries. And I'm glad I did it because it taught me things. But I think the most important teaching was actually asserting the boundaries of when things are okay for me and working out when that line is, when things are okay for me and when it begins to turn into them taking too much power or taking. Like it not coming from love.